Recently, Van Jones had a special on CNN where he talked about a number of different issues, and he had politicians like Rick Santorum on to answer some questions from the audience. There was one audience member by the name of Elizabeth who actually immigrated here to the United States when she was very young. She was 7 years old, so her parents brought her in illegally before she even knew anything about immigration or being an undocumented immigrant. Now, during this Q&A, she asked Santorum about what she should do as a successful, accomplished woman who unfortunately does not have citizenship yet. Take a look.
Growing up here in America, one thing I always heard was that there was a shortage of individuals who entered careers of science, engineering, and technology. And so I decided to be part of the solution. I actually earned a degree in mechanical engineering. I have a career in the technology sector, and I've spent almost a decade working with students, getting them to focus on entering careers in engineering. And I stand to lose all the work that I've done if the new administration decides to end DACA, which is the program that allows undocumented individuals like myself to have the ability to work. It's not an immigration status, it's just the ability to work. My career will come to an end if that program ends, and I will also potentially be labeled for deportation, which means that I'm going to be removed from the communities that I've contributed to so much. And so as 2017 starts, I'd like to ask for your advice. How would you advise somebody like me for planning my future and what lays ahead?
So I wanted to give you guys her question, and you know, in that question, she shares a lot about herself and how successful she is, and she's a female engineer, you know, so.
That's what I think we wanted, right?
Right.
And so you see Santorum go like, and you like at that moment you think there's got to be a little bit of compassion in this guy, right?
Right, because look, there's this narrative that people, specifically conservatives, like to paint regarding undocumented immigrants, right? Similar to what Donald Trump said in the beginning of his presidential campaign. You know, Mexicans are sending rapists and criminals and whatever. And a lot of people buy into that. But the reality is there are a lot of undocumented immigrants who come into this country just looking for a better life for themselves and their families. And they don't cause any trouble at all. Now that we know who this woman is and what she's accomplished, let's see if Rick Santorum has any empathy for her whatsoever. Take a look at his answer.
My own personal story is my father came to this country and was 7 years old. And the reason he came when he was 7 years old is because he wasn't allowed to come here.
Wait, how old
until
were
he
you?
was 7 years old.
I was 7.
So,
he was 7 years old.
Right. So, and he wasn't allowed to come because there was a law in place that he couldn't come. My grandfather was here and spent the first 7 years living in America, working in America, but was not allowed to be with his family because of the immigration laws at the time. And I remember asking my father how, and he was in Mussolini's Italy, not a very, very, very pleasant place to be. And I remember asking him, and he hated Italy because it was a horrible childhood in his mind. And I asked him, I said, you know, did you ever resent America? He said, no, America was worth the wait. It was worth doing it the right way. And I think what most people in America feel is that you've been given a tremendous benefit by being here in this country. You just described something that I don't know what country that your parents came from. But my guess is you wouldn't have had the opportunities to be able to accomplish what you have. My final point is you have the ability to go to any other country right now and apply those wares and be successful, and then reapply to come back to America if you so choose.
Wow. In other words, get to stepping. And it is a classic Rick Santorum answer. You know, hey, you came here when you were 7, so did my dad. And, you know, the laws were not on our side at the time, or the laws are not on your side at the time. Ha ha, I got to stay, and you're not going to get to stay. So I don't know the different regulations that were in place when his dad came over, and that was a confusing story about his family, right? But I thought for sure, didn't you think that as he's explaining that story, he's going to say, so I relate to you, and I want you to stay, but, you know, I get that the but is coming, but at least give me like, boy, oh man, my heart goes out to you. We lived through the same thing. No, he set that whole thing up, and he's like, bye, Felicia.
Yeah, totally.
What?
Totally. So, okay, look, I want to, of course, start off with the caveat that I don't think that people should just be able to come into the country as they please, right? You're breaking laws when you do that, and if you're an adult who
Unless
understands...
you're Cuban.
Well, Well, yeah, there's obviously certain...
And you're voting Republican, then just come on in.
Yeah, that's a little different, right? Cubans get amnesty because of...
Because they're Cuban.
Because they're Cuban. So anyway,
I know,
but anyway,
because
let's
of
move on to
communism.
something else. What I really want to focus on, though, is the difference between an adult knowingly and willingly entering the country illegally, which, again, they're breaking the law, and then a child who was brought into the country before they even understood what was going on. They, I guess, technically also broke the law, but they're children. Their parents brought them in. This is the only country that they've ever known. Now, if they've been here all their lives, or the majority of their lives, and they've done great things despite all these obstacles against them, keep in mind, she's an engineer, right? She didn't get all of these perks and benefits that U.S. citizens get when it comes to going to school, right? You have to go through a lot more obstacles in order to pay for college, in order to get accepted into certain colleges. So she basically dominated those obstacles and managed to be as successful as she is. We want people like that in the country.
I thought Trump said he was going to build a big, beautiful door for people like that in the country. So look, here's what I think is the right answer, but Santorum's not capable of it. So, by the way, I came into the country when I was 8. We did it in a legal way. So I could do like Santorum and go, Joe, we did it legal, sorry, ha, go back to wherever the hell you came from. You're lucky you got to stay this long. And I get to burn the bridge after I crossed it, right? But no, I think, look, of course we want you to do it the quote-unquote right way. We want your parents to do it that way. But you built something here, right? So it's not like you're freeloading. And by the way, a lot of undocumented immigrants actually pay payroll tax, and since they're undocumented, never get that back in Social Security and Medicare. So they don't tell you about that. So they pay for that as well. And so I think there needs to be a reasonable path to citizenship.
Yes.
So you don't just get citizenship right away. But right now, the legislation they have is, and the one that was defeated, is for 14 years of working here before you can apply for citizenship. That is twice as long as indentured servitude. Remember when you were taught that? When you were in school, and they're like, oh man, besides slavery, there was indentured servitude. And if somebody brought you over here just for the price of coming here, you'd have to work for them for 7 years for low wages. These folks have to work for 14 years. That's enough. That's enough. And by the way, most of America agrees. Over 60% of Americans agree. But yet somehow Republicans like Rick Santorum have found a way to block the will of the majority over and over again. And so the reason I say it's a classic Santorum is he has no empathy like other people. Like conservatives, really deep right-wing conservatives, he thinks it only matters if it happens to me. So he, when he was a senator, pushed for tort reform and said no one should be allowed to get more than $250,000 for medical negligence. Doesn't matter. You know, your wife, your kids were crippled, your parents, whatever, there's a terrible mistake, negligence, recklessness, it doesn't matter. Your award should be capped at $250,000. Then his wife had a medical issue. You know what he sued for? $500,000. Twice his own limit that he proposed as a senator. When they asked him why, he said, yeah, but that's my wife.
Damn.
You know you want to get TYT membership so you can get the whole 2-hour show commercial-free, all the network shows.
Go ahead, girl.
TYTnetwork.com/join.